Hey guys, this is Eric. I wanted to show you what I'm up to now. I did at one time in history grow marijuana for about 1.5 years, and I quit that job so that Corey and I could work full-time on a bus to take to Montana. And we did. We took the bus to Montana. Well, first we got a bus, we worked on the bus, we took the bus to Montana, and we spent 3 weeks building an earth ship and then a week just touring national parks. Now that we're back, we're remodeling my house so that we can start to rent it out. So in the meantime, I've picked up another interesting, surreal, weird job. I'm repairing a miniature golf course. So it's only 9 holes and they're all inside, sort of. I mean, it's a patio, it's an enclosed back patio. But they're all these little individual holes that are basically built around one prop. And this thing has been through the ringer. I mean, kids have climbed all over it, kicked holes in it, spilled beer all over it. Not the kids, but you know, hopefully the parents half minding the kids. So it's my job to come in and try to repair this. I've never done anything like this, but I have worked a lot with glue and styrofoam and yellow expanding foam, and that's essentially the materials that these are made of. They're just a plywood base with styrofoam and expanding foam built on top of them to form these structures, with PVC as sort of the internal structure, and also the main socket that connects all of the props to the plywood base is PVC. So I'm basically just filling in with yellow expanding foam, carving it down, and then repainting with rubberized paint and like truck bed liner. So that's it. I've got this gig going on for about 2 weeks now, and I want to show you a few of the things that I'm fixing because ooh, that's much better lighting. I should have started the video this direction. Either way, I'll show you a couple of these props. They're pretty cool. I'll show you some of the things that I'm fixing. And I would have done this yesterday. I actually spent 1 day working on this already, but there were other contractors here and I get squeamish about filming in front of people. So now that I'm alone, let me show you some of the props. All right, one of the very first things I did was removing all of these little signs, and I'll show you why. But essentially one side says Route 66, which runs right here through Tulsa, and then the hole number on the back. These things were plugged into the base via PVC sockets, but of course everybody was swinging on these and leaning on them and pushing them around, and it just worked all these sockets loose, which really tore up the plywood base. So they said, you know what, those are redundant because we already have wooden podiums, these little drink podiums, which I fixed one yesterday, but they're a little bit more robust. They're made out of plywood, and again, I don't know who the original artist was, and I don't know if the same person built these podiums that built the holes. I don't know. I'm just fixing somebody else's work here. But I did have to fix one of these that had broken. Essentially, they had used uncoated screws here, and the sweat from the drinks had rusted through all of the screws, and then this flap just fell over. So I just used liquid nails to stand it back up, put some new coated screws through there. Now I'm gonna spray all these with a clear coat, some Rust-Oleum clear lacquer, just to seal them up a little bit better and help them weather the test of time. But each one of these things tells you the hole number and what the prop is supposed to be. For example, hole number 1, Willis Tower, Chicago, right? And we know the entire golf course is based on Route 66. All of these props are along Route 66, so you don't really need a Route 66 road sign on every single hole. I agree, it does get redundant, and it's just one more failure point that somebody in the future, me, is gonna have to come in and fix. So we're taking these down. They're cool props. I hope that they do some sort of promotional thing with other businesses along Route 66. It would be cool to have these out in people's front gardens or something. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna clear coat these podiums. Otherwise, the podiums are in pretty good shape. They're really well built. But the holes that they came out of, see, which were pretty beat up, I've just filled them in with yellow expanding foam. And I'm letting that foam, well, I've let it cure overnight, so it's pretty rigid. This is the large gap foam, so it hardens pretty rigid. Now I'm gonna come back with a knife and carve all of this foam down. Now that looks pretty minor. There is some major damage as well, but here's the problem. This whole thing was created, all of this rock structure is white styrofoam and yellow expanding foam with rubberized paint over the top of it. People aren't supposed to step on it, but of course they are. It's a miniature golf course. They're gonna hit things with the clubs, they're gonna lean on stuff because they're drinking. I mean, these things get beat up, and I just don't know that this was the most robust material to build one out of to begin with. I love it. It looks amazing. I love the props. I just don't know if it was robust enough. You know, I think I might have gone with concrete. I mean, I'm sure there's an intermediary. I don't build miniature golf courses. Apparently now I only repair them. So this is Willis Tower. Again, see, there's just a lot of damage. I'm gonna come back, carve this down so that the foam blends with the rock around it, and then I'll sponge paint it with rubberized paint to blend in. What is this one? Oh yeah, the St. Louis Arch, hole 2. The arch has seen better days. The arch is down. I mean, it's too tempting not to try to do pull-ups on the St. Louis Arch. So I can understand why it broke. Again, it's just styrofoam and PVC. Hole number 3. Totem Pole Park, Foyle, Oklahoma. This one is awesome. Eventually, if they do get rid of these holes, I might try to buy that prop for my front yard. It's pretty amazing. Number 4, the Blue Whale in Catoosa, Oklahoma. He's missing his ball cap, so I'm gonna have to research. The one in real life, which I've actually never been to, even though it's pretty close to my home, has a ball cap on, but I've never been there, so I need to research it, see if I can recreate that ball cap from similar materials. And these things are gonna need a little bit of new paint as well. Hole number 5 is Round Barn, Arcadia, Oklahoma. So this guy had been through a pretty bad hailstorm. Somebody had stepped right through the middle of the roof. So I've got expanding foam just splooging all out of the roof. I'm gonna have to carve it down as close to round as I can and give it a nice new paint job. More examples of some of the crevices and nicks in the rock that I've been filling with foam. Blue Whale. I'm having to recreate a couple of rocks from scratch with the yellow foam. See these 2 rocks up here? There were 2 rocks like these, but I guess repeated, putter strikes and kick strikes over the years have completely taken it down to the base again. So I'm rebuilding those out of this rigid foam. Not that it's going to be any stronger than what was there before, but it restarts the clock, and it is what these things are made out of. Hole number 6, Pops. Never been there either. So this bottle just has a few styrofoam rings that have been broken loose from that central column. I'm gonna have to glue back in place and touch up the paint. Pardon me. Some major rock damage here, but you can see the underlying layers of styrofoam and yellow expanding foam that make up these structures, and then the rubberized paint, you see, it's just peeling off in sheets. There's a bunch of little holes in this one that I've filled with the yellow foam. Hole number 7, Cadillac Ranch. The Cadillacs are, some are in their places, some are not, so we're gonna get those liquid nailed back into position. Major rock damage. Hole number 8, Wigwam Hotel. This one is all right. A few of the little wigwam structures here. Here's a complete one, see? We've got the tent poles coming up out of the top. That one's got a few broken. Some of these, that one had none at all, so we'll replace them with chopsticks, painted dark brown, get that carved up to look like that. Same over here. Carve it up, repaint it, put some chopsticks in it. Let's see. Hole 9 is the Santa Monica Yacht Harbor Sport Fishing and Boating Cafe. Now this is not an overly complex miniature golf course, as you can see. This is a miniature golf course on the back porch of a food court and restaurant structure with a bar. So people don't come here specifically to play miniature golf. I'm gonna have to replace that pylon right there and a lot of these planks. I could probably cut new planks out of stair tread, the sandpapery tread that you can affix to stairs, commercial stairs. That's meant to be walked on, and it looks pretty similar. Just take some brown paint and put some streaking in it. But yeah, oh, here's some major rebuilding I'm gonna have to do to the edge there. This miniature golf course is a miniature golf course. 9 holes, pretty simple. Each one is probably a par 2. So for somebody like me who's never repaired a miniature golf course, this is the right one to start with. But it still has a lot of really interesting props. The props are definitely the focal point, not the play. But yeah, I'm gonna get this thing back in ship shape, and I'll check in with you later to show you. All right, let me show you a couple of the rocks I've trimmed down already. Now, that doesn't look like much now, but I tried to match the angles of the rocks around it and blend it in, carve sort of hard angles onto it. Now when I paint this, which I won't be doing today, I'm gonna get them all carved to size and then come through and do the painting in one day. Let me show you another one. When I get these painted, they'll blend a lot better. There's just a little structural piece that I rebuilt on the edge. And further clarification as well, the reason why I am using yellow expanding foam, not only is it one of the original materials this was built of, it was the more durable of the two. The white styrofoam seems to have broken in more places than the yellow expanding foam. But also, this miniature golf course, as it were, only has to last through the end of next year. So I am not being hired to get another 10 years of life out of this thing. I'm not sure how long it's been around, not quite 10 years. Maybe closer to 6, 7, or 8 years. But they want 1 more year out of it. So my contract was to come in here and repair the visual damage and get 1 more year out of these structures. Here's a rock I haven't carved yet. See, from any angle, that looks like a pretty convincing, or it will, once I give it some rubberized paint, that will be a pretty convincing addition, I think. Stones around it. Here's an interesting case. I'm working on hole 4, blue whale. The interesting part's not in his mouth. I just wanted to look in there. These 2 rocks that I'm rebuilding. Now, I really have to get into the mind of the artist who originally designed this hole, or this course, this hole course, this whole course of holes, because what do I want these 2 rocks to look like? How do I want them to function? As is, if you hit a ball into those rocks, it would knock it back, pretty much straight back. But the other rocks that he's got around here are sort of fashioned like ramps. They're very low, and they have slanted sides that all face the player. So I have to imagine that his intention with that was to cause balls boo, boo, to ramp boo, either into these little reservoirs back here or completely out of the course. I don't know if that's better, but I think I'm going to take my rocks down to look more like the original rocks so that they'll blend aesthetically, and I will cut them with ramp faces facing the player. All right, here's my take on the new rocks. So they got some nice natural facets and angles. They're about the right size. This one's got 2 sloped faces, a good one and a bad one, and the back is just multifaceted. This one over here I decided to divide up into two sort of independent rock structures. Again, it's got ramp faces on the front and aesthetic facets on the back. There it is. I think that'll work. There's also significant plywood damage. I'm gonna have to cut a flap in this rubberized coating, peel it back, and then take out some plywood. I really like to avoid that. That's just the downside of these being on an outdoor patio that gets wet routinely, and these being built out of what I assume was untreated plywood, because the podiums are also plywood. It was probably the same plywood. Maybe it was treated, hell, I don't know. Maybe enough exposure and people walking on it and water and temperature changes out here finally caused it to start to separate and delaminate. But I have a feeling it was the water soaking up from underneath. I don't know if I want to deal with that. Let me show you one of these easier ones down here. Oh, I'm going to carve the barn up soon too. But here's one where I was just essentially filling a split where somebody had stepped on the outside of this rock and split it in the middle. The outside shelf of it kind of came away, if that makes any sense. So I'm just going to cut and try to blend the crevice back into the rock. It's like a baked potato, sort of, doesn't it? So that build, blend quite nicely. Once we get the rubberized paint coating on. Like that popcorn scene from Real Geniuses. Or was it Real Genius? The Val Kilmer movie in the 80s. I just met the head handyman for this whole facility. Nice old guy named Andy. And we were talking shop about materials used on this thing, and he was giving me some advice and some pointers. Always listen to old folks. They know things that you don't know because they've had experiences you haven't had. So he's going to bring me some different brush-on foams and resins that I can try on this thing. But yeah, I think I got the understructure of the dome pretty close. I'll need to take some more off of that up there, and then I will glue and fold those flaps back down. It's getting pretty close to time for them to open, which means end of the workday for me. But I wanted to show you, now that the screens are open, that this is actually just a concrete porch out back with a wooden fence around it. So these things have been subjected to all manner of weather, in addition to tiny children / animals climbing all over the props. So props to the guy who built these, because considering the materials he used, they have held up pretty well under the barrage of humanity. But now Eric's here to get one more year. All right, last one for the day. Check out this bit of rock show. Ooh, I left some there. Hold on. All right. Now you see a little rock shoulder coming around. This is the 9th hole. What is this? Some sort of a pier? Santa Monica Pier? So here's the rock shoulder continuing around. I've tried to mix 3 distinct multifaceted rocks and yet sort of blend them in with the curvature of the landscape already happening around them. Pretty good, huh? I mean, right now they just look like foam, but just you wait until they're coated and painted. All right, I think that's about enough for today. They're opening, so I'm gonna get the hell out of here. I'm actually starting to think that the low rock shoulders are a really poor design, because you are going to end up with golf balls just rolling all over the restaurant patio and kids chasing them under people's tables. But there's way too much rock shoulder for me to redo the entire thing. I'm just here to patch it up, and even if I made my walls higher, they only constitute 5% of the overall walls in the miniature golf course, so I don't think I would be making a difference. So the balls popping out of these various holes is just part of how this golf course works. I lied. Before I leave, let's take a quick sweeping walkthrough of some of my rock work, but without my commentary. bubble there I'm gonna have to fill. This is like day 3 or 4 of working on the miniature golf course. I'm not sure exactly. I don't keep track. It's part of the great part about being a self-employed contractor. So today, I'm working on this giant soda bottle, which is a commemorative bottle for Pops. It's like a soda place in Oklahoma that I've never been to. The problem is that this thing is made out of styrofoam and rubberized paint. These discs are essentially just stacked around the central core of the bottle. So when little kids try to climb this thing, they put their feet on these lower rungs and it breaks the styrofoam. So a lot of these are loose or just not in place. So I've fixed 2 of them already. I wanted to see if I could get the method right. So what I've been doing is putting liquid nails. Pretty proud of this thing. I'm not the first to think of this, I know. Duct tape a straw to the end of your caulk because my caulking gun wouldn't fit between these discs. It was a bit snug. So I've been sneaking in there, putting liquid nails on the styrofoam shelf, and then picking up the ring, and then driving these bamboo skewers, almost like long nails. Here you can see a couple of them. I basically just drive these bamboo skewers all the way through the thickness of this disc into the central column. And because it's all styrofoam, it works perfectly. So put 4 or 5 of these around the circumference of each disc, then I'll just have to come back and repaint. And that liquid nails should bond them pretty good. Like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. This is like day 4 or 5 repairing the miniature golf course, and I haven't been filming it because I've been vacillating back and forth between whether or not I want to even make this a video. Partly because there is so much more damage than I thought there was, and the deeper I dig, the more that I find that needs to be fixed, the more underlying causes for the issues I'm finding. I had said that these things are built on essentially a plywood platform, and that plywood is completely waterlogged and rotted, so I can't even get threaded screws to hold in it. So essentially the rubberized paint and plaster and foam wrapped around the plywood is all that's holding the plywood together. And the plywood's starting to delaminate and separate in some spots, and there's not much I can do because a screw, it won't even hold a screw. And I don't want to use washers and bolts to create a compression because that's going to leave an exposed washer or bolt head on top of the surface, which needs to be smooth so golf balls can roll across it. And I don't want to put too much work into rebuilding these things because they've only lasted 3 years, they've already been repaired once, and they only want 1 more year out of them. So I'm not going to rebuild the entire thing. So for example, I've been peeling up these were made out of shingles. They're essentially boardwalk panels from like a pier or a boardwalk, but they're just made out of painted shingle, and they're not durable at all. I can peel them up pretty easily or break them, which I don't want to. I'm only replacing the ones that I absolutely have to replace, and I'm gluing the rest down with liquid nails. Underneath is just a bed of old cracked plaster. So I'm probably going to fill most of this in with just a pourable epoxy and create a smooth surface. And then I didn't want to build them out of shingle, so I got this other roofing material called Ondura, which is like a pressed fiberboard. It's some sort of petroleum tar product, but instead of grit and sand, it's just got a sort of fabric weave implanted in it. You can cut it with shears. So I'm going to cut the new boardwalk panels out of this because this stuff is tough. This stuff is way tougher than shingles. And I didn't want to buy a whole box of shingles. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I am going to make some more videos of this. I'm pretty proud of this novel solution. I'll video it when I'm done and we'll see if it worked at all. We're all done with the mini golf course. I'm going to walk you through and show you some of the things I did. There were giant chunks missing out of the building. Not giant, I'm just exaggerating now, but there were chunks missing out of the building. I repaired these windows as best I could. Tried to match the color of paint. It should fade to match a little bit better, but for now it just looks like people have lights on in these rooms. Moving on to the arch has been completely fixed. It was out of the ground. I re-anchored it using epoxy into the ground and then tried to smooth the transition a bit from the rock to the arch. The arch itself had a bunch of chunks missing and a bunch of flaking paint. Got all that taken care of with epoxy, caulk, specifically liquid nails, and then spray paint. This turtle, his nose was broken off, so I used yellow expanding foam to rebuild the nose, covered it with epoxy, and then tried to match his paint as best I could, but his head's a little darker than his hands and feet. No worries. This thing's pretty colorful. I think it'll blend. Buford the blue whale. Oh, I haven't even shown you all the rock damage. I added a bunch of colors to blend, so this was all just light brown. And all the rocks on all these things were damaged. I mean, they've all just been kicked and split. These two were broken completely off. These were torn all to hell. So as you can see, I mixed a bunch of colors, some browns and some rust reds and some light browns to try to give the rock a bit more natural color, but also hide the damage in the repair. Because if I left everything the same color, even if I repaired it, you'd still see the repair. So I'm trying to hide it visually by adding some more rock colors in there. And you're gonna see that consistently on all the holes because I wanted to make that sort of ubiquitous to the entire thing. So I just added color everywhere. Here's Buford's hat. It's built out of a sheet of Ondura and PVC dome. Let's see, I put some new water in there, meaning just 3 layers. I did a layer of light blue, a layer of dark blue, and then a layer of clear over the top. Tried to make it look sort of shimmery. Round barn. Don't love this one. I should have just bought a steel salad bowl and put it over the top of this thing, but I tried to rebuild the existing dome. And it is, I mean, you can see, it is definitely a dome, but you can see all of my repairs. Now, I looked up the real round barn, and yeah, this is pretty close. I mean, really, if they asked me to repair this again, I'm just chopping the top off and affixing a steel dome, a steel salad bowl, and then I'll just paint that to match. That was a hell of a lot of work, and it didn't turn out ideal for me, but it'll do for now. Fixed all the rungs, all the broken rungs on this bottle. Got them all lined up and refastened. Got all the rock over here fixed. Got all these cars reattached to the ground and gave them some cleaner transitional seams. Where they joined to the ground was very messy. I cleaned all that up. Same with the wigwams. We had a bunch of the tops broken off. A bunch of these, sorry about this, their awnings are broken and they're just slamming around. I'm more worried about the awnings re-destroying this than I am kids. Got all these wigwams repaired, replaced these poles with chopsticks where the poles were missing, which was all but one of them. And then rebuilt the material around the poles at the tops. And then over here, this was probably the most work. I had to re-cement the Santa Monica sign into the rock, repaint the pole, repaint the transition, and then replace about, let's see, you can tell the ones I replaced. They're the ones that are made out of Ondura. These were shingle. These are Ondura. But I painted them all to blend with various shades of wood. I replaced this one wooden pillar, which doesn't look like the others, but it'll blend, you know? And it's solid. It's way the hell more solid than those. So yeah, that's the shingle piece, that's the Ondura piece, which is way tougher. So I guess I replaced 5 of those and then blended them in. And then also did the same trick for water over here, a layer of light blue, layer of dark blue, and a layer of clear. Yeah, I don't want to do this all the time, but